Welcome, it's Tuesday, January 15th, 2013, and this is Capital Conversations. I'm Marty Owings. My co-host tonight, Paul Gardner, has the night off. Apologize, we got a little mic problem here. As always, we invite you, the audience, to participate in our interactive weekly political talk show. You can tweet us your questions or comments to MNCap News, or send us a message on our Facebook page at MN Capital News or Capital Conversations. Tonight, a debate-style format will be on the table, on the plate for us, featuring two lawmakers from opposite sides of the political aisle. It's our pleasure to welcome tonight Democrat Jeff Hayden, who's a senator, was first elected to the legislature back in 2009. He represents District 62 in Minneapolis.
That's right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you,
for
Senator.
having me.
Thank you for being here. And Republican Representative Tony Cornish in his sixth term from Vernon, or Good Thunder. I couldn't figure out. There was a slash.
Live right in between them.
Right in between, all right. And he's representing the good folks of District 23B. Welcome to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Later on the program, we'll be joined by Sarah Walker from the Second Chance Coalition and the Coalition for Judicial Fairness. She'll give us her update on efforts in that regard and a policy outlook for the session. Okay, let's get started. It's debate-style format tonight, gentlemen. Each of you will be asked a question and given 2 minutes to make a statement. Your opponent will then be given 2 minutes to respond, followed by a 1-minute rebuttal, and we'll alternate. We have 3 questions on tap tonight. We only ask that you respect the format by sticking to the time. I'll tell you when you've got 30 seconds left and when it's time to stop. Understood?
Understood.
All right, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
All right, our first question is for Representative Cornish tonight. You'll have 2 minutes to make your argument, and Senator Hayden, as I mentioned, you'll have 2 minutes to respond. Then we'll go back to you, Representative Cornish, for 1 minute. All right. And I'll read the question, and then we can start the timer. Representative Cornish, you've been an outspoken advocate for Second Amendment rights during your time here at the legislature. That's no secret. In the wake of the Sandy Hook Elementary School tragedy, you had mentioned you might introduce a bill that would allow teachers to carry loaded guns in the classroom. Do you support any controls on guns whatsoever, such as assault-style weapons? If not, why?
No, I don't, and I support a control on the criminal, these psychotic people or lunatics basically that are committing the crimes. And the reason that is because there isn't one shred of evidence anywhere in this nation that supports the thought that gun control does any good. Chicago killed 500 people last year, homicides, more people than we lost in Afghanistan. They have the strictest controls there of anywhere in the nation. On Connecticut, at that shooting, they had some of the strictest controls on firearms, including assault weapons, and it didn't stop anything there. In the Taft shooting in Colorado the other day, or excuse me, California, where the student walked right in with a shotgun and shot people, they have the #1 rating from the Brady Control Group. So we're probably in the top 5 in the Brady Control Group on ratings for gun control, yet all these things have taken place. And they talk about the AR-15 not being a sporting rifle. Excuse me. It's one of the most popular sporting rifles. 10 million people own them. And they're used for hunting deer. They're used for hunting prairie dogs, for varmints. Ranchers use them. They're a very popular weapon. The thing about the clips, the magazines, 30-round magazines won't do a thing if you change them to 10-round. In fact, the school shooter had magazines strewn all over. A lot of them were half empty, only shot half of the shells in them. And you're not gonna stop anything by that. You have to control it. We have to turn it. We have to turn it back to controlling the criminal, the mental health area. I'm all in favor of compromising and tracking guns, in keeping the bad people from getting guns, and the school teachers. People are jumping on that all the time. And the Star Tribune said nobody endorsed it. There's schools all over. My school, when I was chief of police, had an armed guard. They're jumping on the bandwagon all the time, and I think it's the thing of the future. You hear it in the paper every day. More schools are getting armed guards.
Thank you. Perfect. You did that with a second left, so not bad. Representative Hayden, Senator Hayden, I don't want to drag you down to the House.
No, I love being in the House.
They call it the upper house,
well,
right?
You know.
They call it the Senate the upper chamber.
Absolutely.
All right,
Absolutely.
well, your opportunity to respond.
You know, I can appreciate Representative Cornish's position around Second Amendment rights with respect to law-abiding people who use their guns properly, who go out and hunt and if they shoot for sport, I think that that's fantastic. You know, the problem that we have here is that we have people who are, a lot of times, I wouldn't call them lunatics, but they are mentally ill. So what I'd rather do is I'd rather give teachers the training. Instead of giving them a gun, I'd give them the training to recognize students that are mentally ill in their classrooms, to work with families to figure out if they are having emotional and mental health issues so that we can give them the proper treatment that we have. I think Representative Cornish and I both said that we would like to up that. As it relates to kind of assault-style guns and high-capacity clips, you know, I really do think that the part of the problem, and even some of the cities that have the most gun control, when you track that, a lot of those guns came from neighboring communities, right? And so part of the issue is making sure that I don't think that there is a reason for someone other than Representative Cornish, you know, who is trained, who knows how to use a gun, who can put it into place and take care of it, that no one else should really kind of have that gun, and that when the gun is that accessible, right, to people who may want to do wrong or who may be mentally ill, I think we have to protect ourselves from that issue. In addition to that, I think we really have to deal with the issue, the societal issue around poverty, the societal issue around creating communities.
30 seconds.
And the societal issue around having communities in which we have poured drugs into those communities, we've poured guns in those communities. Communities like North Minneapolis or even some parts of South Minneapolis that we've had crime issues, Chicago and Los Angeles, there isn't a lot of gun manufacturers in those neighborhoods, right? Somebody is bringing those guns in there. So I think that I think there's a lot of law enforcement officials that actually disagree with Representative Cornish, and I respect him as a law person, but I think we really need to have a broader take on this issue.
Okay, that's it. And now, Representative Cornish, you'll have 1 minute to respond to Senator Hayden's remarks.
My response would be, do you really want somebody out in Washington, D.C. that can't even balance the budget to decide what is a sporting rifle and what is an assault rifle? The Obama administration is going to take on that the definition, and that scares the heck out of me. I don't want somebody deciding what I can and can't use. And once again, the statistics do not support the thought that gun control reduces crime. And when they always throw this Great Britain and Australia at you, actually they have more violent crime. Their murders might be down, but they have more violent crime than we do. And people are always going to get guns. That's the unfortunate thing. We don't just throw our hands up in the air, but there's nothing you can do to stop one of these psychotic people. And I hope the mentally ill advocates don't get upset with him, but these people that walk in don't just have a little mental illness. They're bat crazy. And that's the people that we got to stop from getting guns, and I'll support anything about stopping those people from getting guns.
Perfect. I appreciate your thoughtful remarks. A couple of follow-up questions for both of you before we get to the second question in the debate. You said guns full stop. Did you mean any weapon at all?
No, I just think that the high-capacity clips, I think assault rifles, we should take a really good look at that, and we should kind of, tamper down, a lot of the rhetoric and really look at the issues, really look at the evidence and really look at the data. I'm not talking about long guns. I'm not even necessarily talking about, pistols, but I do think that there is a threshold. We don't have bazookas, we don't have grenade launchers, we don't have, so there is an end to that, right? There is a place where there's a threshold where we said kind of regular, everyday law-abiding citizens should kind of be restricted from certain weapons, and that's what I'm talking about.
And to you, Representative Cornish, what, as Representative or Senator Hayden pointed out, we do draw a line at some point. Even though I know that in some states a 50 cal might be illegal, I handled a 50 caliber weapon in the Army, and the Geneva Convention said I couldn't shoot at people with it because it was just too terrifying and too terrible a weapon, like a saw gun, for instance. And yet there are sportsmen who shoot for hobby who'd like to own a saw gun or a 240 coax or any of those kind of high-powered machine guns. Where do you stand on that? I mean, where do we draw the line?
Well, I don't think we do draw the line. Basically, it's already illegal to own automatic firearms and huge automatic firearms. If you want to own an automatic firearm, you go through all sorts of registration. The reason that we don't want to give an inch is because the gun control advocates lied to us. And I was sitting, in 1975, I sat across there and I watched the handgun permit bill get voted in by Warren Spanis, who lost his job because of that. Basically, he admitted it. But they stood on this floor down here and said, we will not ever touch your long guns. You have no worries about your shotguns and rifles. rifles. Now here they are. The DNRA gets made fun of for saying that it's just a foot in the door, but it's truth. And it's going on now, and President Obama is going to try to do an end around with these 19 directives, and it just scares a lot of sportsmen and gun owners.
Second Amendment advocates, especially who, believe the Constitution shouldn't be messed with in this regard. Although, of course, when it was written, we were talking about muskets and ball shot rifles. But I just can't help thinking a little bit. I'm not editorializing, but hard to look the family in the face of those kids in Sandy Hook and explain to them about weapons and their, when they've lost a 6-year-old child, a 7-year-old
Sure,
child.
but they
I
don't
know
all,
that you've
they don't all feel like that either. I mean,
Right.
some of them would advocates more gun control, and some would say, I wish the teacher would have an MP4 auto. And so it depends on which parents you talk to, As far as for me, I would rather have my kid in some school with an armed guard than anywhere.
Okay, that's it for that question. Now, second question for the tonight. I appreciate that. This one goes to you, Senator Hayden. You'll have 2 minutes to make the argument, followed by 2 minutes, followed by a 1-minute response. Governor Dayton has stated he'd like to see, quote, fairer tax system be implemented in Minnesota. One he says will ensure the wealthiest Minnesotans are, quote, paying their fair share, right? The DFL has already introduced bills that would likely increase taxes in the state, and we're only out of the door. It's only been a week. How can the state afford to address all the things the governor and the DFL have stated they'd like to get done this session when it's already facing a $1.2 billion budget deficit?
Well, what I would say to you, Marty, is that the governor's budget hasn't come out yet. So we don't exactly know what the governor is going to want to do.
He's been all over the media about
Yeah,
it.
but he hasn't. But we haven't seen his budget. I don't know if you saw his
No,
budget.
I
then
didn't
maybe
see
it's
his
news
budget.
to me. I haven't
He
seen
doesn't
his
send
budget.
it to me, Senator.
So, with that being said, I think it's important for us to look at the governor's budget. Bills are, there's bills that every single day, that's our job, is to put in ideas that we think we want to get heard and we want to get vetted throughout our system. So I wouldn't take the early bills. We know that if you've been around here long enough, you know that what you put in on the first day is likely not to end up what you get signed into law. With that being said, I think there's going to be reform. I think there's going to be innovation. I think there's going to be a comprehensive look at our tax code. The governor has campaigned, as many of us, on making sure that we have tax equity. And that includes people who make the most money, the wealthiest Minnesotans. We think that that's very important, that there's tax equity throughout. But I think we want to do that with a balanced approach, and we want to be very cautious on how we look at how do we make sure that the tax system and the revenue system versus the expense is fair. So we also are going to look at the expenses. We're also going to look at what we spend and how do we spend it and make sure that that's as efficient as possible. So I think before we kind of jump ahead and automatically think that there's going to be a tax hike that Minnesotans can't afford, that we should walk through this deliberative process that we have here. And then we'll see at the end of the day kind of what are we going to sit down and what are we going to do. I think that it is extremely important for us to go through that process and not get so ahead of ourselves. One of the things I said on the floor this year is that we've campaigned and people in Minnesota have spoken. And now it's really time for us to sit down and kind of go through this process, work with our friends on the right, listen to what they have to say, listen to the evidence, figure out how the process is going to work, and then at the end of the day, hopefully come out what's best for Minnesotans on the expense and the revenue side.
Perfect. You timed that just right. Representative Cornish, 2 minutes to respond on the budget question.
Well, I think that when the governor's budget comes out, it is going to have tax increases in it. It's a for certain thing. I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I'd bet quite a bit of money if we could gamble in Minnesota. The other thing is that the Democrats, the DFL, just cannot do it unless they raise taxes. They've been promising people for quite some time that they were going to fund education more, they're going to fund health care more, and the environment more, and now these people are lined up at the door, and they got their hand out and they want more money, and some of them rightfully so, but we've got enough money. We don't have to raise taxes. The quarters have come in with excess money. The tax collections are projected to be up. Part of our budget deficit is factored in. There's a huge budget reserve that we'd put in there, almost $1 billion, and we shouldn't be spending all of that. We have to realize that I think that we can make it without increasing taxes. And I would say, how much do the rich really have to pay? And defining the rich, a lot of those people they're defining are small business, and they're scared to be. Heck, the medical device company is facing a tax. Now they're talking about a sales tax, and rest in the Senate. And then to get around more taxing the rich, they started at $200 on up. The rich already buy a lot of things and invest a lot of things and pay a lot of money in taxes, and they buy more automobiles and other things like that. So that's why I wonder how much will they have to pay. So it's my position, I think, that we don't need to raise taxes. That the more money is coming in, we'll be able to deal with it. We're not in the crisis mode. It looks like the economy is improving, and I think it's for a large part, the good fiscal choices that we've been making in the past about not overspending and actually reducing spending. So
And the growth of programs.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, just in a regular growth alone, we're going to increase our budgets. We just got to watch out.
Perfect. Now, let me reset the clock here, and you'll get your 1 minute response time, Senator Hayden.
Well, you know, one of the things that I think that, and of course Representative Cornish has been here a lot longer than me, we've done a lot of gimmicks. We've kicked the can down the road. We've done a lot of one-time spending.
School shifts.
The last time we did a school shifts, the tobacco bonds, there's been a lot of one-time spending, shifts that has allowed us to kind of be in a perpetual deficit each and every year, no matter what the economy does, unless it explodes. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to get a sustained budget that we can depend on, that is not full of the gimmicks that we have all been guilty of voting on. I'm not, you know, I think that my friends on the right have probably leaned on that a little more than us, but I would say that I voted for that as well, right? Because we needed to get Minnesota moving, and we knew that people would hurt if we didn't. So I think one of the things that we want to do is be comprehensive, be thoughtful, go through this process, and hopefully get out of the gimmick, kicking the can down the road budgeting process that we've been subject to the last few years.
Perfect. Follow-up question for you on that, Representative Cornish. Is there a way for, and this will relate back to what you were saying, is there a way for Democrats and Republicans to work together on a budget when they control the legislature and the governor's up in the big house here?
Well, sure, there's a way. They just have to come to the light and accept our proposal. No. There's always a way, sure. The problem I feel, the solution is going to be in fees and surcharges, and that's what scares me a little bit. You're going to see a fee on this, a surcharge on that, and kind of a backdoor way of taking money out of your wallet, not just taxes. Yeah.
Talked about that.
So, and then permit fees. So business is worrying about that too, you know.
How's that different from Republicans putting more of a tax burden on, say, property tax ownership by cutting LGA, though?
Well, I don't think that we've both cut LGA. I think that even when we gave more LGA in that 2-year period, I think taxes went down, property taxes 9% one year when we gave them a lot of LGA, and then the next year they went up 9%. And that's a local decision. And both the property taxes went up record years when the DFL had it too. So
well, but I would
neither
also
one of us
say,
have really solved that problem.
Right, but I will also say that, you know, not funding education at the state level appropriately does raise property tax. People go, you know, school districts go to get a levy, right? And that's extra, right? So I do think that there is a way without gimmicks, right? And I think that, frankly, you know, a lot of the fees, I think that if we do tax, we'll probably call it a tax. I don't think we're going to backdoor our way to revenue. If it's going to be a revenue raiser, we're going to spell it out.
All right, well, that'll remain to be seen. A quick question for you, though, and a follow-up to that.
Well,
You got a big caucus now.
Yep.
Yeah, in the House, in the Senate, there's a lot of Democrats in there. Not all of them are going to be on the side of that. They're going to be from swing districts. They barely made it in. They replaced Republicans.
Right.
Some of them returned after they got.
Right.
So how is there? You know, you could swing. There are kingmakers down there, right? 3 votes, 4 votes, and it could change things.
Well, I think that is the beauty of our caucus. It is a big tent caucus, right? And
you're saying beauty now, but I wonder if you're
well,
going to be saying that.
you know, I've served with 72 members in the House.
That's right.
And it is a big tent, and we don't you don't have to take a pledge with us.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to say you will or you won't do it.
There's no
you
litmus test?
There's no litmus test. I mean, we want you to be, you know, a Democrat, and we want you to be fair, but we're going to talk to each and every member of our caucus, and they're going to have to make a decision on what they think is best for the state and their district. But once again, there's no litmus test in the DFL caucus.
Very good. Last final question before we get to know the legislator section, or segment. But to you, Representative Cornish, you have 2 minutes to make a statement, followed by the 2-minute rebuttal, followed by 1 minute back to you. There are a number of proposals being put forward by the DFL to raise the minimum wage in Minnesota. The current minimum wage is $5.25 an hour for small employers, $7.25 an hour for quote-unquote employers that are bigger, grossing more than $500,000 a year. The last time the minimum wage was raised in Minnesota was 2005. Do you support or oppose a change to the minimum wage, and if so, why?
I oppose a increase in minimum wage, and answering, I guess the best answer would be, how many nails do you want to put in business's coffin? We're going to raise the sales tax. We're going to raise the minimum wage. The medical device tax. I mean, how many times are we going to slam business and tell them to stay out of Minnesota? And so I wouldn't, and the best indication of whether that's a popular idea or not, I think it was in the, I can't remember if the Star or the Pioneer Press, where it was, somewhere in print, it showed a bartender, and he was worried about his employer, because he thinks that when these employers get hit with this increase in the minimum wage, that they're going to lay people off and they're going to cut back hours, and it's worsening the working condition. They rely, a lot of these people, on tips. And so, no, I would not support raising the minimum wage, especially with everything else that's going to go on. Tax the rich, sales tax, this and that.
Oh, you still have time. Continue.
No, well, anyway,
Yeah.
just, I wouldn't support it because everything that's mounting up. By itself, it didn't seem bad a few years ago, but when you add the sales tax to it, and the minimum wage, and tax the rich, and anything, and the fees, and the surcharge, and the permits,
Right.
I think I'm going to be right in this. At the end of the year, you look and see how many little things were raised here and that to fund things, and you'll find that this progressive is going to take on a whole new meaning. It's going to take progressive tax scale.
Okay, very good. Your opportunity to
Well,
respond,
I
Senator.
support the raising of the minimum wage. We've seen in this country where the rich has gotten richer and the poor has gotten poorer. That's the facts, right? So I appreciate Representative Cornish's position on how much do we push on business. But, once again, the wealthy are getting wealthier. The economy is turning around. And those low-wage workers are not keeping track. They're not keeping up with the cost of inflation. And so I do think we need to have a great, thoughtful discussion on what happens if we raise the minimum wage. I think we're going to find out at the end of the day that is the right thing to do, that those people spend money too, that those people, that raising the minimum wage often will create an environment around here where we don't have to subsidize so many things. Right now, I'm a great proponent of subsidized housing, right? I really fight for the safety net. I would not like to have to do those things. I do them because I don't want to see people cold. We have a cold night out tonight. I want to see people inside. I want to see people making a living wage, working very, very hard. And I think the start of that is raising the minimum wage. And I think that business will be able to work with that. I think we have to be thoughtful. I think we do have to make sure that we're not overtaxing or overfee or over-permitting people. I think the governor has been in favor. He did a great job last year at kind of hastening the permitting process. And I think we're going to look at all those. I think that this kind of idea, this stereotype, that Democrats are just going to tax you to death, I don't think you're going to see that this year. Now, I could be wrong, right? Because members have election certificates and they get to put in the bills and kind of figure out who they're going to get to join them. But I don't think that there is a path that we want businesses to go away. I think that we do want to work with business. I think we do want to make sure that the state is prosperous. We just want to make sure that just the high-end folks aren't the ones that are making all the money. We want to make sure that there's some equality, and we think that one of the ways is taking low-wage workers, raising the minimum wage. That really will help them so that we don't have to subsidize them so much.
Okay, perfect. And then your 1 minute response to that, Representative Cornish.
Well, the 1 minute response would be that the DFL just can't get there with their plan. When the governor introduced his 2011 budget with the tax the rich, there was still a huge hole that you couldn't fill, and they're going to have to do it somewhere. And so my response would be that don't do it. I mean, the tax the rich, the sales tax, we've got enough money with the increase in funding we're getting, the tax collections. I think the economy is on the way back. I think it will continue to be. At least wait until February 28th before we start draining wallets.
Do you see we still have some time, do you see that minimum wage being another in a long line of entitlements, as Republicans are sometimes fond of calling
No,
them?
I don't think entitlement, no. And some people think that they're deserving of it. And you could talk, minimum wage when I started out was $1.80 when I was, started out as an employee and a bartender. Yeah. And it's gone up, and I just think it's going to be too much if we hit business with one more tax.
Well, that's it for that segment, for the debate segment. We'll let the viewers decide who the winner was tonight. Social feedback, social media feedback. You can tweet us or send us a Facebook message and give us your comments or feedback on who you think won the debate tonight between these two distinguished lawmakers. Now, this is the get to know you part. This is the fun part. Cliff, what do we have? Any questions from the Twitter sphere?
We do. We actually have a question from Rich. And he says, New York just passed mandatory reporting by therapists to government, individuals who they think may harm themselves or others. What do you guys think?
Mandatory reporting for therapists. They have to turn in their name to the government. Your thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen the New York law yet. Hopefully it's done in a thoughtful way. I do care about people's rights and their privacy, and we have pretty strong privacy laws, especially around people's health. But I do think it is important for us to identify people who may be a threat to themselves or to others, and to figure out how to get them the treatment, and then also to make sure that they don't get a dangerous weapon in their hand.
That just scares the bejesus out of me. I've heard about that in New York, and gun rights advocates, sportsmen, and private individuals, people with mental illness are really scared of that. That's like one of the old things we were always worried about before, is the government coming after you. This bill that they passed in New York is really scary for the mental health advocates here in Minnesota. I think we're a lot smarter than the people in New York, the legislators anyway, because what they did is there are a lot of mental illnesses that don't make you dangerous. And you can't just classify somebody with schizophrenia or this or that and say that they're going to be a school shooter and go get their guns. There's so many different types of mental illness. In my relatives way back, there was people mentally ill that I would totally trust with a gun. We got to do the mentally ill dangerous one, or the ones that make outward threats, but let's not throw the net over all these poor people with any type of a problem.
Very good. It's a quick rapid fire round. We got to wrap up the segment, but I wanted to ask you both a couple of questions.
Sure.
I think they're entertaining in nature, and people get to know you. Who's one person, Representative Hayden, from the other side of the aisle, and this could be a former or current colleague, that you respect and admire?
Well, I like Representative Cornish. Absolutely. We disagree on most of the issues, but I respect that he is strident and true, and he believes in what he talks about, and he's willing to stand up for his position. Former Speaker Zellers is a great friend of mine. Former Majority Leader Dean. I think Representative Cornish will tell you that I got along with the other side of the aisle pretty well, so I didn't really have an enemy over there.
You, Representative Cornish?
Well, how do I answer that question? Now it has to be Jeff.
Right.
Thank you very much. But secondly, after that, I think from the other side of the aisle would be Representative Rukavina. I traveled all the way up to his retirement party up in Mountain Iron Beale the other day. I was one of, I think, a couple of Republicans.
Another rural
that did.
legislator, yeah.
Yeah, and even though we disagreed in a lot of things, he was a little Wellstone. And I don't mind a liberal as long as they tell the truth, pound their desk with their fist. That doesn't bother me a bit. I respect
I feel
someone
like you knew where he
stands
stood.
up just like I do as a conservative.
That's right.
What, if any, hobbies, Representative Hayden, and I know a few of yours, so don't try to hide. No, a few hobbies you think that might surprise people that you have.
Well, I like to garden. I think that is fantastic. I don't know if making barbecue would surprise anybody, but I definitely like to cook, and I think that that's important. I love spending time with my family. I love to ride my bike all around the chain of lakes. I think that's great. I like to golf, though. Because of all the campaigns for me going from one house to the other, haven't been able to do that as much. But I really do like to get my hands in the dirt and garden a bit.
Representative Cornish?
In mine, I think there's a couple of them. One would be a travel. I like to go to Tombstone, Arizona, and coyote hunt out in the desert. And the other would be restoration of old vehicles. I've got an old 1975 Snorton Norton motorcycle that I'm bringing back to mint condition. And my dad's tractor, an old H International. I've overhauled a tractor before. I'm working on that, and I'd like to bring them both back to restorative condition. It's a way to get your mind right, get your
Tractor
hands
has some sentimental
you bet.
value for that, yeah. Last question for you guys. It doesn't have to be long, just quick fire, but why did you enter politics?
It was very, very organic. I just grew up in Minneapolis, left, went to high school and college in California, came back, and the community that I had grew up in was a lot different. There was a lot of changing. There was a lot more of violence and things that were going on. I decided to stay, got involved with the neighborhood association, got involved with working with at-risk kids, and then the opportunities to run for office came after that.
Actually, it was a gun race thing that time when I was watching Warren Spanis's bill progress here. One guy got up and he said, well, he says, you voted for my dairy bill, so I'm going to vote for your gun control bill. I thought that was such a ridiculous statement that I would maybe I'll get into politics and do something right. It's a true story.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you both. Thanks. That's all we have time for, but really appreciate you coming on the program. You both, an interesting debate tonight, and I know you guys are veteran legislators up here, lawmakers, and you've got your work cut out for you this session. Good luck.
Thank you, appreciate it.
You
Good.
bet.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
you.
You bet.
Thanks.
Coming up in a minute, Sarah Walker from the Second Chance Coalition and the Coalition for Judicial Fairness, if I can get that out. She'll be with us and tell us about fairness in the courts and second chances. We'll be right back after this.